Well, welcome everybody. I am so excited to bring Patricia Morgan to you today. Patricia specializes in helping people build personal and emotional resilience. With an MA in clinical psychology, she is certified with the Canadian Counselling and Psychotherapy Associations. Her training includes healing trauma, EMDR, and inner child work. She has had the privilege to facilitate the healing around hundreds of clients who struggle with depression, anxiety, negative self-talk, relationship conflict, despair, anger issues, and shame. As a seniorpreneur, she thrives by sharing her insights and journeying with clients as they gain new awareness of their resilient, lovable, and resourceful selves. She came into this space after entering her own therapy journey to better manage her anger rages. Her journey wasn't easy, especially when she had to face her painful childhood that held unresolved issues from generational trauma and childhood emotions and physical abuse. The rewards of healing improved her relationships, deepened her sense of gratitude, and increased her confidence. Today, Patricia is going to be sharing with us how to resolve relational conflict and how to navigate our negative self-talk. Let's just go ahead and start with our self-talk and how we can embrace this to increase our connection with others. So go ahead, Miss Patricia. I'd love to just dive into our brains for a second because it can be quite a battlefield, can it?
Right. So it's estimated that we have about over 6,000 thoughts a day. And the question we want to ask ourselves when we consider that 6,000 thoughts a day, how many of them are supporting us and how many of them are beating us up? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the person who's the most critical to us is our self-talk, that part of us that is nattering and taking away our confidence, our self-esteem, and that lovely article that you wrote recently. And so I think about my prop, my self-talk prop, and what is my little self-talk saying to me? Is my little yatter saying, oh boy, you a loser. You can't do anything right. You know what? You're gonna blow this interview. Or is my self-talk saying, you're doing your best, that's more than enough, you're lovable, you're capable, you're resilient. Mwah! That's the self-talk I want to kiss. Yes. So so the question is, where does the put down, the negative, the toxic self-talk comes from? Well, often it comes from the unconscious. I find with my clients, many of them have no idea what they're saying to themselves. So just earlier today with a client online, she was talking about one of her children and then an issue. And she said, and so that's another thing I'll have to worry about. And I said, whoa. So one of the things that I love to help my clients with is slowing down the process so we can actually hear the self-talk in our head, because often it's so programmed in our head, it just comes out like it's ordinary languaging. There are some classic negative self-talk that is around for most people and has been around for generations. If you think about people who have had family in the Holocaust, they sometimes have this language of not enough. Some of them, even if it was grandma that was in that dreadful situation, and you're the granddaughter, you may end up hoarding food because it's been a practice, a generational practice. I love telling the story about the Alberta woman who would take a roast, a nice Alberta piece of beef, and cut it in half and put it in 2 small pans. And her husband said to her, sweetie, why do you do that? And she said, because my mother told me I should. So he went to his mother-in-law and he said, what is this, taking a lovely Alberta roast, cutting it in half, putting 2 small pans? She said, well, my mother told me I should. So he went to the grandma and said, Grandma, what's this about? And her answer was this: oh, for goodness sakes, are they still taking a roast and cutting it in half? I was raising a family during the Depression, and we only had 2 small pans. I think it's useful to laugh at some of our generational pieces, right? But they become so ingrained. That should word usually means if I'm saying should to myself, or I'm saying should to you, or I'm saying should to my loved one, or I'm saying must. We're going to watch the shoulding on ourselves and shoulding on ourselves and others. Masturbating, I call it. Where does it come from? Can you end the sentence? I should be nice to my mother-in-law because. Wow. Can you answer because? Often it's just a habitual pattern, like the cutting of the roast, right? So I grew up with a dad who was quite wounded. He'd dropped out of, well, he never got into high school. He quit school, grade 8, if you can imagine. And then he went to the Second World War, and he came home, and nobody ever diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder, but he lived with that. And he had night terrors. He had a huge anger management issue. He took one brother's head in one of his hands and my head in the other once and smacked them together. And I won't get into any more details, but that gives you a sense of the trauma that was passed on. And we still have children and grandchildren of veterans who haven't attended to their post-traumatic stress disorder. But it doesn't have to be veterans. It can be a grandma that had sexual abuse, and that gets passed on. She either won't talk about sex, or if you wear a skirt that's too short, she calls you a whore or some other nasty word. And either end is an avoidance of a healthy conversation. Yeah. So what we have, if you can think of your family, sort of like those mobiles that hang down for the babies, and you've got a mobile and the other person's got a mobile, and the other person may be that person you partner up with, and you wonder why you're having conflict. Right. Well, you got 2 mobiles clanking into one another, right? You've got all these belief systems, unconscious thoughts that may blurt out. And I'll talk a little bit more about how often we hook up with somebody who easily triggers us. So my dad used to call Mom and me the stupid females, and women should shut their mouth. So I grew up with this. I had to take training in assertiveness training to speak up and to be able to even to say a no. Right. So you see that gets programmed into you unless you have some kind of intervention that changes the self-talk. He also, because he used to say the stupid females, I failed grade 7 and I dropped out of high school. I absolutely believed that I was stupid. Now, here's an interesting piece about the conflict. So I'm walking around feeling I'm stupid, and I'm sort of failing out of high school, on the cusp of leaving. I'm only 17 years of age, and at a dance, I meet a 17-year-old, 2 months younger than me, who is in second-year university. He got into university at 16. Wow. No doubt about his intelligence. However, he's got lots of doubt about being social. And I've always been fairly social. So guess what? That's who I married. And there are times as we matured in some ways, that got triggered because here's the unconscious agreement. The unconscious agreement is, I will fill your big hole of feeling stupid, and you will fill my big hole of social struggle. And if you violate that unconscious agreement, then we're going to have a big fight. And I see this over and over again in some of the couple counseling I do. So one wife was the oldest of 5 siblings, and her mother is alcoholic and not available, and who knows where dad is. She's over responsible. She has to be, if she's not controlling of all the gaggle of the other four, she gets in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
She pairs up with somebody who's terrified of making mistakes, because anytime he made a mistake, he got in trouble. So he would be ultra obedient. Well, they pair up and they're happy at the beginning, right?
Mm.
But then he starts calling her controlling and she starts to call him irresponsible.
Mm.
And so the dance continues. So that's so if we can clean up our own chatter in our head,
Yeah.
if we can learn to manage our nervous system. And for the last year, I've been studying and using with my clients, mapping their nervous system, because I used to, if I was told I made a mistake, for example, Patricia made a mistake, I am stupid, like just picture it like a little wound right here.
Mm-hmm.
My stupid button would get activated. And I say, oh, and I practice, oh, thank you for the information. Go to the bathroom, cry my head off, do a bunch of self-talk, go find somebody that might help me know that I've got an intelligence again. But now I make mistakes lots, even when I'm presenting online, and I'll say to my audience, okay, everybody, put your thumbs up. It's okay to make mistakes. And so I'm modeling, self-care.
I totally hear you, Patricia, because throughout my journey of transforming my mindset myself, there was a season in the workplace that they wouldn't even have to tell me that I made a mistake. They would just come and tell me and give me constructive criticism, like, oh, if you could just shift it to this or do it like this. And it would probably be beneficial for me in the long run because it would simplify my life. But I would like, oh, I'm a failure. I literally would go in the bathroom and bawl my face off. Or sometimes I wouldn't even make it to the bathroom. I'd just start crying with that team member in front of my desk. So I totally get it, where I felt like a failure. I too am a high school dropout. I grew up with abuse, and my mom had, her mom had passed away when she was 3, and she was thrown into the foster system. So she had a horrific upbringing. I'm a product of prostitution. So then I'm a constant reminder of her past that she wanted to avoid. But then she constantly always had abusive relationships because she felt that was where she felt validated or valued or whatever. And being told your whole life that you're nobody, you're nothing, you're never going to amount to anything, that sticks. And it is so hard to transform that. And I do know some dear friends of mine that still have been getting abuse from their parents, telling them that they're a failure, they're a this in their adult life, they're a mom, and they're in relationships and they're doing some really good things in their life, but their parental guidance that they're looking for, that acceptance, is squashing their belief in themselves. And so that is where I am so excited for us to hear from you today, because there's so many of us that still allow other people's judgments and thoughts to dictate us, and it just fuels our self-belief that we have already got unconsciously. It just fuels that in affirming that what they are saying has got to be true because this is how I am feeling, and they're just reaffirming it. And it's not truth. It's not truth. They have so much more to offer, and once we can reprogram that.
Right. Well, you've two pieces I want to pick up on what you said, Tracy. So a core theme for you is I am a failure, right? That's the self-talk you want to catch sooner.
Yeah, I'm not there anymore. I am much better. But I recognize when that ugly little devil wants to try to sneak back into my world and try to pick at me, because that's the thing with our thoughts, is that we can find success and we can find levels of increase our confidence, but those little devils, they like to kind of, like your little chatterbox there, that was really cute, comes in and tries to chitter chatter and tries to weaken us down so that we will fall back into the same old patterns, right? Because it just tries to pull us back. But then if having tools in our toolbox to recognize and filter, is this thought truth? is it really truth? Like what you're saying or what I'm saying to myself, is this really true? And being honest with yourself, I'm not an idiot. I've been able to accomplish a lot of things in my life, even as a high school dropout. Like I know that I'm not an idiot. I am a hands-on girl. Like you can't put me really in a textbook and expect me to learn everything I want to learn. But if you get me into the hands-on and into the muck, I'll create anything. Like so.
Right. So yes, you've grown and you've identified that core belief. For me, the I am stupid is it's like a healed wound, but that little part of me is still tender. So I need to keep an eye on it. And rather than calling it a devil, I call it a part of me. I often call it little Patsy. So there's a little part of me that didn't get what she needed when I was little. And I took in the powerful words. Like when parents speak to their children, it's like God speaking. It's like it's got to be the truth, right? So that little part of me sometimes still gets a little activated. And I've developed another part of me that is the wise, mature, loving part of me that takes care. And I say, oh, you're starting to believe that again. So rather than calling it a devil, I encircle it in my circle of love. That works for me. Each person has to find their way to integrate those messages that happen to them. Our parents gave us, my dad gave me what he could. Right. I actually ended up doing a talk a number of years ago about feeling loved by my father. I did the internal work to see he actually didn't pass on as much trauma as he had experienced in his lifetime to me. And I started listing some of the acts of his gesture. He's never able to say, I love you, but I interpreted to support myself. I changed my whole relationship, my internal, say I have a father in my head, a mother in my head, I got a grandma in my head, I got an old boss in my head. It's like the whole committee in my head. And it's, can I develop some empathy for all of these voices and parts in my head? We have parts in us from the time we were born, sometimes even parts of us in utero. So we have an adopted daughter that has disabilities with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So she had trauma in utero, swimming around in that toxic alcohol, right? So you sometimes think about, if you have some compassion for yourself, even before you're born, you start to get affected by the outside world and the people in it. So parents gave us what they could. So it's really, I find it really useful for me to settle down and say, okay, from a place of regulated nervous system, of calm and compassion, what is it that dad can give me? These capable give me, and I will only go there for that, for his list of what he can give me. Yeah. He can drive me places. He can introduce me to his friends. But to go to him, to hear I love you, and you're doing a really good job, I don't go there because I will get disappointed. You know, rats figure out where the feeding trough is empty and they go find another feeding trough. I recommend to people that they find mentors in their life. I am so privileged to mentor 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 women that one calls, I have several call me speaker mommy. I have a woman from Ethiopia, my dear Gannett, who calls me her Canadian mommy. I have a marketing friend, Jeanette Anderson, who calls me her fill-in mother, who did not get a fraction of the nurturing that they deserved growing up. And we women are natural nurturers and find the person doesn't have to be older, could be whoever has the capacity the
That's great.
capacity to love out of overflow with no conditions. I just love you because you're here. If you were born lovable, just the way you are, what's changed? Nothing. You are God's gift to this world. Now that using the gift, knowing our gifts takes a little more work, but you can never argue. If your dog and cat are lovable, all babies are lovable, then you too, Tracy, are lovable. The capableness needs a little bit of often some massaging. So I love sending people. I did this in case we needed it. If you Google this via character strengths, Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, spent 10 years with his team developing an inventory. It's totally free. Millions of people have taken it. You answer a bunch of questions, what your preferences, and your top 5 strengths come up to let you know your strengths. And it's really helpful. My definition of living on purpose is know your strengths, give what you can. Oh, all right. So how'd that settle in for you?
That's so good. And I love how you shared about that revelation that you had, that your dad did give you what he was capable of. Because that was also, I lost my mom to suicide when I was 19, and we did have a toxic relationship. And it took a long time for me to heal and to understand. I used to grow up, I felt like I was the ugly duckling, that I didn't belong and that I wasn't loved or cared for. But as I was walking through my healing journey, I would get angry and I would just be like, okay, God, like if you love me, like you say you love me, why did you put me with that family? And he goes, well, who else, Stacy? I'm like, what do you mean who else? Like, why are you punishing me? He's like, no, I needed you to be a lighthouse. I was put there because I have a nurturing spirit, and my mom needed me. And she leaned on me a lot, probably more so than she needed to, as you know, because you're not supposed to really do that when it comes to parent-child relationships. But I guess him putting me in that family with my mom really helped her make better choices, even though, you know, looking back, like in the dysfunction of my growth, I was like, yeah, she could have done better. She could have done better, you know. And but when I came to the healing side of the spectrum, I was like, you know what? She kicked ass. Like, she worked hard to make a difference and break generational curses, and she didn't even know what she was doing. She was instilling in me. I was abused by a stepbrother, and she encouraged me to press charges, because she goes, if you don't, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, because she was speaking truth into my life of mistakes that she made in her past, that she was hanging on to that regret. She and basically would always be very transparent about the abuse that she had endured, and so that instilled in me to never allow a man to raise his hand. And so there was things that she had done to like want a better life for us kids, and she didn't know how to do it any other way but in her dysfunction. And so when I have the utmost respect for her today, even, and I wish she was here, and I know she probably hears me somewhere in the heavens, but I'm very much full of gratitude towards her and the journey that she has had to endure, and the fight that she had to battle in order to get to the state where she instilled some good values into her children. So yeah, it is a journey. And I remember asking God, like, why didn't she love me? And he goes, Stacy, she did. She loved you the only way she knew how to love you. How could she have loved you the way you needed to be loved if she never experienced that for herself? She gave you everything she had. She was always on empty because she was always pouring out. And that was just a huge humbling experience for me. So
well, what I see you doing in many forms, particularly on the Beautiful You platform that you've developed, is you are using the gifts of the wounds.
Thank you.
You've reframed them into a gift to those women who are ready and receptive. Right? That's beautiful. And introduce me to a person who hasn't caused hurt or pain to another.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. We've all been damaged and created damage, right? So
Right. I can't tell you how many clients, and I've worked for many agencies, and then in my seniorpreneur years, I practice here. And of course, since the last year and a half, it's expanded incredibly using Zoom and the camera.
yes.
But the healing that people do for themselves and the work that they do for themselves, trying to heal this generational trauma, much of it would not be necessary if the parent woke up and said to their children, when I said that mean judgmental thing or did that piece of abuse, hit you or whatever, that was about me. That was about me. I was out of control, or I was wounded, or I was struggling. And that's not about you, because that's often the unweaving. We start to take in those I am that came from those wounds that you were sharing about your mom. And we take it on as, and there's a part of a child often that if they decide that they're the bad ones or the wrong ones, then they've got some power and control, because as a child, you have next to no power, control, or choice, but that is left to you to feel like you've got some power and control. So it's very, very common to take those on. But so seldom do we have people have a parent that will come forward. Many people in therapy will sometimes go and try to get the apology or to have the adult take responsibility. Sometimes that parent doesn't even remember. Their nervous system may have been out of such whack. They may have been in a place of emotional danger and urgency that there wasn't a prefrontal cortex available to take in that as a memory.
That's so true. And, even just that whole relational component, I remember God saying to me one time, he's like, I needed to go and have a conversation with my stepdad. And he used to visit me in my room in the middle of the night, and very, very broken man, and had lost his dad in the war and was an alcoholic from like grade school. Like, I don't know if he'd ever experienced a sober day of his life until he was hospitalized. But I remember the Lord saying, like, you need to go and have a conversation. So I'm having all these, like, you did this, you did that. I was going to go with all my laundry list of like, you need to ask for forgiveness kind of stuff. Right. And God's like, you're not ready. You're not ready. So he had to, for months, he was working on my heart. And then one day I was at church and God's like, today's your day. And I'm like, okay, God, like, I'll go, like, but what am I going to have a conversation about? Because obviously everything that I've like drafted up in my head is not going to go down well. And he goes, Stacey, you're going to go and ask for forgiveness. And I was like, say what? What did I do? Like, I didn't do anything wrong. He's like, you're going to go and ask for forgiveness because of the bitterness in your heart. And I was like, it was such a sobering feeling. And I was like, okay, yeah, I am bitter. And it is turning to rage, and it's overflowing into every other area of my life. Trust issues, all kinds of stuff. Right. So I was humble. I was like, okay, the Holy Spirit totally got to have my tongue, because I don't know how I'm going to say this without some supernatural help. And at the end of the lunch that we had, I was like, okay, Dad, you know why I invited you for lunch? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, I'm just coming to ask you for forgiveness. He's like, you know me, let bygones be bygones. And my whole being wanted to jump across the table and poke his eyeballs out because I got so angry. And he's like, and then I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm asking for forgiveness because of the bitterness in my heart. And something shifted. I don't know what else came out of my mouth because I really just gave it to the Lord, but he just shifted his whole demeanor. He sat back in his chair and he turned into a snot-nosed blubbering mess. And he started apologizing to me profusely. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I was so humbled by that experience that I was just like, A, God is so real. And B, that he can touch the hearts of the hardest hearts he can soften, and he can bring light to situations. And I needed that healing, and the only way I was going to receive that form of healing was to come at it with a humbled heart and to be able to ask for my part in the situation. And that was the bitterness that was being like enclosing me, right? And it wasn't healthy for me to move forward in any other healthy relationship because I was hanging on to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really owned your experience rather than projecting.
Yeah.
There's two people that are all people walking around walking wounded in one way or another, but those people that have hardened themselves with layers of defense are walking around with a huge mess of wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so charging in there doesn't do, they'll just do another layer of defending. But good for you, your softness and allowing, shall I say, divine intervention to be present helped open up the armor. Just that's a beautiful story. Because if we're guarded and then somebody starts trying to poke in, we'll just get more guarded. So you really own that. Congratulations. Such a beautiful story.
That was not in my strength. Believe you me, sister, if I had to do it in all my own power, it would never have happened. Because because we feel hurt and we want to be heard and we want to be seen, and we want the people that hurt us to recognize their part in the equation. But they're not, like you said, they're not always going to recognize their part in the equation because they can't remember, or they block it out at their own self-soothing mechanisms, right? So we can't judge their path. We just have to find a way to understand why they are the way they are, and then how to we approach it to guard and protect our own thought life, and how we can protect our spirits and hearts to how we portray our love and into our other relationships, right? Because I know that particular relationship was causing conflict in my marriage because I couldn't trust. I had all these disbeliefs in my head and my heart that like my husband would do the same thing that my stepdad did to my mom, and that was not pretty. And so I had to be able to walk through that healing journey. And I love the fact that you do focus on some inner child work, because I've had to do that too, where I've had to go back and be like, okay, well, where are you, Stacey, in that equation? And go and love her. I love that you have the puppet and that you're, loving that inner you, that child of you inside you, because when you grow up with that neglect or abuse or any of that kind of stuff, then that child of us in us did not get the love and nurturing that we needed and deserved and desired. And so we as adults, we can give that to ourselves, but we have to be able to recognize where we are and pick ourselves up and give us some love.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking we are all God's beloved children. And we need to spend as much time as we can with people who acknowledge that. We need to be in a really good place to you have to be in a really good place to be with your stepfather who doesn't know that about himself.
Mm.
He's very wounded. He doesn't see the truth of who he is. He's probably often acting out of his own hurt.
Mhm.
And, you created emotional safety in that moment, that he was allowed to feel what he feels.
Mm.
I mean, it's just a beautiful story. The people often, when we say get triggered, they're not present. They're either defending, or they're fighting, or they're fleeing, or they're collapsing into hopelessness, and in some ways absolutely collapsing into themselves and disappearing from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow in that moment, you were able to create a place of emotional safety that supported him in going also to emotional safety. It's called co-regulation. So when we feel separate from others, we're usually, when we feel that separation, that disconnect, we've gone into the reaction of the nervous system that takes away being present, into survival mode, triggering danger, danger, danger. And we either do that fight, flee, or collapse, disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't disappear. And he didn't defend.
No.
He stayed authentic. So I hope you frame that moment in your mind.
It is, it will never leave me. It's sketched into my DNA now. Like I look at that as such a God movement. He's no longer with us. His alcoholism ended up taking his life. But even on his last breath, he gave his life to Jesus, and just overwhelms me that God could just reach such a hardened heart, because he was hard. And it is such a powerful thing that I was able to witness and be a part of, just loving him through the last days and years of his life, because
Yes.
I couldn't have done it without supernatural ability. There's no way. Like the trauma triggers, like when he was in the hospital, I went and cleaned up his house and made sure he had food in there, and all that. And that was extremely emotional and very, very hard. Brought up lots of traumatic experiences for me, because I hadn't been in that house for 15 years.
Wow.
So it was a huge stretch for me, but I was able to love him through what I'm good at. I'm good at organizing and cleaning. I was raised as Cinderella, so it was an easy task for me. And I just wanted to let him know that he was thought of and cared for. And when he got out of the hospital, he was in there for quite some time. And
yes,
yeah, it was just a really great opportunity for me to be able to show him the hands and feet of God. And that obviously touched him, because when he went back into the hospital the second time, he was more open to receive the love of Christ. So that was it's just good how God just knows. He knows. See, and if he didn't put me with that family, then what? Right?
Well, you were their blessing.
He used me, like, and so God says, you're the lighthouse. And now my older brother, he's now given his life to Christ. And he was stuck in addictions for 23 years.
Wow.
He's 2 years sober, and he's turned his whole life around, restored his marriage, his family, and he's just on fire for God. So it's just really exciting to see just what God's doing within my own family dynamic, and how he's calling me to this platform to minister and to love on other women. Just to come back to what we're here to talk about, though, I love that you're stirring all this up in me. Thank you. But the whole negative thoughts, and being able to navigate and process all of those thoughts and reprogramming them, how does that fall into the whole outward how we deal with our relationships. I have a specific friend in mind that, like I said, she's been torn apart and torn down. Even to this day, her mom still is very condescending and negative and never can speak anything positive into my friend's heart as a mom. And she wants so badly to have a relationship with her mom, but it's very toxic. And then all of that insecurity that has transpired with, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and past broken relationships that she's had that have been toxic. She's now in a relationship that she loves and wants to nurture, and she doesn't know how to navigate that relationship because all these insecurities and negative thought processes keep coming into the equation, and it's stirring other things up that she doesn't want to stir up. So feeling unappreciated and all of those things that just play like in her head of not feeling valuable or worthy of love.
Right. Okay. So, a couple thoughts on that. So, it's wonderful that she has found a nurturing, loving relationship. There's 3 areas of relationship to take a look at. Just narrow it down to 3. One is commitment. Are we committed to one another through the shadows and through the light? The next is, how is our communication? Are we able to see, hear, and acknowledge one another? And the third is, do we do cherishing behaviors, filling that emotional piggy bank? So those are 3 areas to take a look at. Am I affirming my commitment to you, that I am here for you? Have I developed some communication skills that I can be authentically me and share with you what's going on for me, feelings, beliefs, where I get tripped up, and am I able to see, hear, and acknowledge you as this imperfectly perfect person? And then, are we doing cherishing behaviors and appreciation, and perhaps reading the 5 love languages so that we know how we give and receive love.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stay in relationship with mom, to promise self to not go there for self, but to go there to be present to my past and just to notice, with no expectations of giving or receiving, but simply to be present as a sort of an acknowledgement of, this is my past. And maybe just learn a little bit more about yourself by watching mom's patterns. When we have expectations, that's when we get ourselves in trouble. When we're with a loved one, we negotiate some of those expectations. I just want to also, what we're thinking in our head will come out. So we can clean up our own thought patterns. And I did write out a few, what I would call stinking thinking thoughts. And some of these will relate to the stress that we've been under recently with our world upside down. But this one, there's a should. I talked about the should tendency with the roast beef. And this one is coming up a lot right now. People comparing themselves to other people, rather than saying, I am coping the best I can, or I'm not coping as well as I would like. How can I up my self-care? So again, noticing that when you find yourself doing shoulding on yourself, it's really often very shaming and pulls self-esteem down. This one is also quite familiar. Is, again, this has to do with comparing and saying, other people are doing better, maybe more, they're more successful, they're more whatever, right? And this, if you find yourself helpless, powerless, in that frustrated mode, to remind yourself that you have endless possibilities, where when you were a child, you did not have power. You often were helpless. This is common, especially for parentified children such as yourself, Tracy, is that really children are vulnerable to dependency on parents for food, shelter, clothing, guidance, love, support. And if that doesn't happen, this is very common that I cannot trust anyone. I have to be there for me because there's nobody else there for me. And it's I say you can trust people to live life their way. So you know the person who comes on time. Do not trust them to come on time if they are 90% come late. Right?
That's right.
If you're going to mom's house and she burns the meals 90% of the time, do not trust that you're going to have a delicious meal when you go. Trust people's behavior. Yeah. So that's what you want. Many people have fine intentions, right? Those people say, "Oh, I'm going to save up now," or "I've learned my lesson of saving," and then they're always forever in debt. So trust people, but my master's thesis was on the experience of being trusted. And in the end, I concluded, because I was terrified that I would have clients that would take a suggestion and mess up their whole life based on what I said. Mm-hmm. And in the end, I needed to trust myself that I could handle anybody out here choosing whatever behavior they chose.
That's right.
It was okay. The serenity prayer goes, you probably know it, grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change. That includes other people. The courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There are some people that I trust some people to fib to me, and other people I trust to be honest, to be supportive, to be caring. And we're back to, what can I trust Dad for? I can trust him to boast about his children's education. And I can trust him to imply that he paid for it. He didn't pay for any of our education. We all had to manage figuring out our education on our own. Mm-hmm. And I could trust my dad to always volunteer to drive us somewhere, so I could trust him for that. So what can you trust what for? This was from I just wrote this out from my, have to. You know what? There really aren't any have tos. God will still love you. There aren't any have tos. There are consequences though for every choice, right? Yeah. And we can only kind of guess at the consequences. When you find yourself, it's similar to must and should. And of course, this is my little theme song. That's my deepest wound. Interesting. I've spent my life turning my wound into gifts. I've written, I don't know how many books now. I've got a bunch of ebooks. I've got one on trauma, one on loneliness, one on stress management. I've got one on how to support and help other people. Then I have 8 books you can actually put your hand on, published, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So, when I'm gonna know I'm intelligent enough. My gift and my wound around stupid is I love learning. I feel empowered when I'm learning. So, and transmitting it. This is another very common one. And this one you'll hear over and over again, particularly for women. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not caring enough. I'm not resilient enough. All this not enoughness is a way to sum it up. So we want to catch. Very common. I don't have enough money.
Not doing enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not what?
Doing enough.
Doing enough. I'm not thin enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Many.
So if you find yourself the not enoughness stuff, you want to catch that. So the first step is to catch the thought. The second is, I'll hold these up and you can read them for me if you wouldn't mind. I want people online to think of a thought that's not serving them. Might have been one of these that I just showed you, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of what I call your core theme song. And then there's one question. If you
Does
read
this
that out
thought positively serve me, my loved ones, and the world? Does this thought positively serve me, my loved ones, and the world?
and you might want to add God's work for me, And the second question is,
What will be the consequence if I keep thinking this thought?
last but not least,
What do I want to think?
and another way to word that is, what does God want me to think?
That's right.
I notice that you have a lot of conversations with your God, right?
We do, yeah. We wrestle it out lots.
And then stir yours. So if you notice, the first question is, does it serve me and my loved ones? So if you want a loving relationship, you want to slow down your thoughts, and you want to notice key words that are cues of danger for you, where you will get disconnected from your loved one. So our adopted daughter spent a number of years, well, it was just a year and a half actually, but that's still a long time for her, in a residential treatment home. So she was gone Monday to Friday. And we do not in our family use the word residential school or residence or we don't use residence or residential. It is a huge wound for her. It's really, really important to know your partner's wounds, those trigger wounds. And if my husband ever dared to say, "You are stupid,"
Whew. Not going to go down well.
Even that was a stupid mistake. He knows that the word stupid is under the belt for me. So this is a conversation that you have with your partners about, what was painful for you growing up, or what's the trigger for you. For some women who are very, very sensitive, have had many women have these eating issues, weight issues. And I used to do a presentation, of all my presentations used to be, because I haven't done one live for a long time, but it's called Merry Lovemaking. And I talk about this sacred vessel that we have, this body, and how it needs to be touched and caressed. And I had this woman come up who had some extra weight, nothing that would be alarming. And she was just weeping, and she said, "I know my husband loves every single thing about me, and it's just the chatter in my head that doesn't allow us to have wonderful sex." And she did something about her body image. So we get disconnected when we get triggered into our own crap, and then it's dysregulation, and then that's ripe for conflict, right? And the work of Gottman, John Gottman of the Gottman Institute, who was one of the first people that wired up couples, put them in a cottage for the weekend and monitored their heart rate and their sweating and everything. And he would have them have conversations, and they had cameras, everything. And he's one of the first deep researchers. He could tell in like 5 to 10 minutes, 90% accuracy, who was going to get divorced in a couple. And there's a summary of his book on my website. He called them 4 horsemen, and he could tell by some of the language and some of the behaviors. So contempt is one. He could tell whether a partner had contempt for the other. Eyeball rolling, when the person said something, or going like that, right? So contempt for the other person, even when if one spouse was saying how hurt they were, and the other one would roll their eyeballs. Oh yeah, those just gentle contempt pieces. Defending, saying, if you say, when you drink too much, I feel totally disconnected, and it's like my husband isn't there anymore. It's like I'm left alone with, I don't know who this person is, because I married. Can you tell whose story this is? Because because I married somebody so smart, and then when you act stupid like that because of the alcohol. So, and that person says, well, you just have a hang up, blah, 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 and they defend. So that's another criticism. Nothing you do is good enough for me. I mean, that's the basic message. So, for example, sometimes the dishwasher will not get loaded the way you like. You say, thank you for the improvement. Criticism is just like putting a wet blanket and people on conversations will start with, you've got a problem and you need to fix it. It's better to say, I have a problem. Have you got a minute for us to sit down and talk about it? Will you help me with my problem? Rather than criticizing the other person. I know it doesn't bother you that you have 2 or 3 drinks. It bothers me. And I'm wondering if we can have a discussion about it, because I want us to be a really loving partnership. I love you so much. You always sit down, it helps you get grounded. So there's criticism, there's the defending, and there's fleeing. Gottman calls it stonewalling. And that is, there's a problem and we're not talking about it. It's like the elephant in the room pooping.
Yeah, they just shut down, right?
Shut down. You might almost be living like roommates. So it only takes one person to stay in the calm possibility, thinking of possibilities in the brain, calm, collected nervous system state, to welcome the other if they are dysregulated into regulate. You have to wait, do some breathing, say, just let me know when you're ready. You watch them calm down. You know them better than anybody else. I'm quite extroverted, so I have great facial expressions, and you can usually tell with me what's going on. I have a very difficult time fibbing or lying. People know right away if they ask me, how are you doing? And I go, well, let me think. Yeah, I'm doing fine. And they say,
you want the truth or you want the
exactly. Yeah. This is how I tell if my husband's feeling any kind of agitation. He does this. And if you were sitting with us and there was company and his hands were in his lap, nobody would know but me. I kissed him when I was 17, married when I was 21. We've been married 53 years. 74. And about every 7 years, it's sort of like a different marriage, because about every 7 years, there's sort of this adjustment that happens. You've heard of the 7-year itch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought like I made past 7 years. We're golden. we're at 18 right now, but you're right. Every I guess 7 years, there's been a new development in depth to our relationship.
Right, it's sort of like a renegotiation happens. So, and there are these life passages for you. So when you start having teenagers, there's not as much, they're more on their own, and there's sort of more of a negotiation. Then when you have the empty nest, there's another negotiation. When one or both of you leave employment, say retire, people keep asking me when I'm going to retire, and I say when I'm tired. And I'm not showing any signs right now. I love doing couple therapy, and I love a little bit more, doing the deep inner child and or trauma work. Sometimes people are carrying around trauma from a previous relationship. It could be a boyfriend or previous marriage, or let's say a car accident that's got them shaken up and they're not willing to get in I've had 3 clients in the last year and a half that wouldn't get into cars, and huge problem when it comes to relationships, because it's inconvenient for a lot of other people when somebody won't get in a car. But they had hung on to. So trauma, just so you know, trauma is a stressful event that happened and didn't come to closure. And you brought to closure, going back to your story with your stepdad, you brought to closure multiple distressing events with him, but you'd held on to, when you, all those expressions of you were about to scream and strangle him, those are all tendencies out of trauma. They weren't anything that got triggered in that moment. That's how we can tell if we need to go and get some attention done for us, find some way to get on that healing journey if we get pulled back when the present moment all is well. It's called reacting to cues of emotional danger, right? And you were able to contain it all. So relationships, to me, I'll just share what I think is an ideal relationship. Not that we're like this all the time, that you're the only person in my life. There's over 7 billion of us on the planet. But this is the person I choose to be my main soft shoulder to land on. Right. The person that I know I can count on to have my back. And it's not somebody that's always lifting me up or pulling me down. But if I get ego crazy, that person is willing to tell me the truth and bring me down. No, you're not that amazing. This is not a good investment of your time or money, right? You're not really prepared, honey, right? Bring me down. And when I'm down, put with my yakety yak negative self-talk will help bring me up. But we can't depend on that being the only person to bring us up or bring us down. It's our main person. And I recommend you have 3 confidants in your life. I'll give you an example. It was a number of years ago. I was menstruating, thank heavens. I'm so free without it. And the pimples broke out and I had a headache and I came downstairs and I was all like greasy and icky. And he was working on some income tax at the table. And I said, excuse me, can you say something positive? Because I'm just in a mess right now. And he just looked up. No. You know, he was in the zone of income tax.
Yeah.
And I remember I was this little defiant self. I got a little triggered, but not overly. It didn't take all the blood from my brain. But I put my hands on my hips and I said, I am lucky, and so are you, that I have amazing friends. And I walked over to the phone and picked it up.
That's right.
Right. And my girlfriend, I'm feeling crappy today. I'm menstruating. I got cramps. I'm feeling blah, blah, blah. And I just want somebody to commiserate. So males are trained to fix. There's a problem, then they fix. And if he's not able in that moment to fix, then he can't really be helpful to you, can he? And females, this is based on the tend and befriend research from Taylor, found that. Are you interested in this? This is interesting in dynamics too. I mean, I could go on and on about differences between males and females. We are wired somewhat differently. We all have the when we're in danger, the fight, defend, flee, or collapse response. That's both sexes. And Taylor found out that women had 2 other tendencies, responses. Not all women, but the majority of women, and it's called tend and befriend. And I see myself doing it over and over again. I get myself in a distressful situation and I want to yak, right? It's called befriend. And so, you know, when women get together, they often will de-stress by talking about all the problems in their life. Men will just pick up the phone and say, do you want to play a game of squash or not? Yes or no, and then they hang the phone up. Right?
You want to go to the shooting gallery? Yeah, exactly.
George, George, I'm just so upset today and I'm feeling really crap. Do you hear a conversation like that? Not very often, right? No.
But when us as women, if we have the wrong friend that we turn to, it could be catastrophic.
Yes. Let me end the befriend and then I'll come back. Okay, so that's befriend and the other is tend. And this is something, there's an emergency going on. What do women do? They run around and make sure everybody else is okay first.
Oh, we're so good like that.
We're so good like that. Yeah, well, we are hardwired. We have more oxytocin. we're hardwired. The baby comes through us. The baby goes to the breast. The need and tendency for women, even the hormones and all of that, tends to provide us with this connection piece. If you think about generational, if you think about the women at the caves, they stayed in this gathering place where the men were out being more competitive. So it's socialized a bit. I mean, men have oxytocin as well. They have a need for connection and touch as well. Mm-hmm. So you just said something that I wanted to spin off of for a second.
When we're getting yacky to yak, I need to get some talk back.
Yes.
We need to have the right talk back.
Yes. So Brene Brown, the shame vulnerability researcher, talks about has a list of the red flags of who you tell your story to. And yes, so you have the girlfriend that ups it. Well, you think that's bad, and then she tells you about her dad's
problem. Yeah.
Right. So she ups. Then you have the one that does the sympathy. Oh, you poor dear, you poor dear. Then you have the one who wants to rescue and has all the answers. Mm-hmm. Right. Then you have the friend that is the academic, which will give you lots of facts to choose from. So there's this herb remedy and there's that herb remedy, and here's the phone number of my my naturopath, right? So, yeah. And all you want to do is you want to pull your nervous system down because it got activated into this frenzy, this anxiety, and you're looking to be heard.
That's right.
I could just feel myself calming down, just entering that space and coming back. So how do you tell the friends that won't be giving advice or wanting to fix it like, some males do? Hairstylists are very skilled at just
listening
gently. Yeah, tell me some more. One is that the person can stay present and track you. It's kind of hearing what you're saying and then kind of spinning it off. Kind of a curious perspective. We wouldn't need therapists like me, if we all could do the exquisite learning.
We typically have the answers in ourselves, right? We just need to talk it out and not have people tell us their version of the fix, because it's not going to be good version for everybody. Right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Now, sometimes we don't know. Sometimes it's useful to provide a resource, and friends typically can't help bring closure to past distress that's creating trauma. We probably will always need therapists for that, because it's I've studied for years that skill base, right? Yeah. But as far as in a recent disturbance in our life, a stress is different than a significant distress. We all have stress in our life, and we minimize it by exploring it and being heard.
That's right.
So yeah, being heard and being said, wow, good on you for that beautiful moment you did with your stepdad. Just be affirmed. I have never met anybody that's both sex that doesn't appreciate being seen, heard, and acknowledged. So that's what you're looking at. Am I feeling seen? Right. Am I feeling heard? And is my experience being acknowledged, not ignored, not denied, not like the quick fix, but just acknowledged.
And that's really the heart of the Beautiful You coaching app, is to create that safe, loving environment where women can come and feel heard and seen, to break the silence of the suffering so that they aren't faced with judgment or fear of judgment, of sharing their struggle in a safe environment like that, where they, can get the support of a listening ear with love attached to it, without any expectation or fixing tools, unless they ask for them, right? And then that's where professionals like you and I come in, is where we can go a little deeper with people. But at the same time, that's not always the case what they need right out the gate. They just need to know that, hey, do you get me or don't you? Right?
Right. Yeah, do you get me? Yeah. And not everybody will.
That's
And
right.
again, I have a range of friends, and some of them don't reciprocate at all.
Mhm.
However, they appreciate something that I have to give. And then I have some friends that are full of resources, the resourceful person, there's the connecting person, and there's the rare, exquisite listener.
And we
So
need them all, right?
we we need, yeah, we need one another and a variety. Just like children need a village, a child needs a village to grow up in. I think we all need a village that is our support circle.
That's
And
right.
people come in different shapes and perspectives. The Myers-Briggs indicator, which if you go online, you can Google Myers, M-Y-E-R-S, Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S. And it's an indicator of personality preferences, the introversion preference, the extroversion preference, the intuitive preference, the sensing preference, the harmony feeling preference to the logical preference, and the preference of liking lots of choices compared to coming to a decision quite quickly. And often we are attracted to a partner who has opposite indicators. And so knowing about ourselves and then being able to observe others and noticing their gifts, not comparing ourselves, but saying, this person is useful in my life, knows how to organize. That comes naturally, has a sense of order and logic. And so when I want to clean out my closet on my birthday, I did this a couple times. My girlfriends would say, what would you like to do for your birthday? You'd like to do something special. Would you come to my bedroom? I'll make sure I have lovely furniture, bring some snacks, and we'll pull my clothes out. And that's how we will spend a couple hours. And I've done that a number of times, and it's benefit. And I know the ones to invite for that and the ones that I don't invite for that, but maybe I do something else with them, right?
Yeah, that what a great way to, hey, let's clean out my closet. Like, have some wine, let's have some play dress up. What do you want? Let's do this. So yeah, and it's so refreshing, right? When we are able to do those things. I am definitely the type of person that needs to refresh every now and again. And there's lots of value to that. And I don't know, I could have been a professional organizer because I'm one of those gifted people that can walk into a room full of boxes and know where everything goes.
See, that's when we want a friend that knows that. Not one, you don't, in that moment, you don't need, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you, I'm acknowledging you. It's, no, I have this gift I can give you.
Let's get to work.
Receive it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this has been an absolute amazing conversation, Patricia. I really very much appreciate you coming and sharing your expertise and knowledge with the community today. If there's anybody in here that would like to connect with you and work with you on, do you do one-on-one or do you have group sessions where you can, like, you do pretty much one-on-one selectively now, right? Or what is it? Or how do people work with you?
Okay, so for the deep inner work, it's one-on-one.
Yes.
I would say that's 2/3 of my counseling practice. Then I have some couples, right? And then I do presentations online. And if you're interested, you find me, Solutions for Resilience, and you sign up for the newsletter. And once a month, I do a free presentation through Masque's Cultural College, all the way from understanding trauma, understanding loneliness, this month, November, we're doing assertiveness training. So it's just an hour. I talk for about 35 minutes to 40 minutes, and then we have any questions or discussion afterwards. In 1 hour, it's over. And then I get hired by organizations through my professional speaking business. But I have an arrangement with Masqueeze Cultural College. I do these free personal development events once a month. So you're welcome to join those. And I also let people know about them on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. They're usually but more direct is the email that comes out. I send out a newsletter called Your Uplift once a month. So it's not an inundation, just once a month you would hear from me.
That's
if you're interested, of course. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love the diversity in how you've been able to put your practice into motion. The couples therapy is definitely a must have. I think I'm surprised you're not like jacked full right now, because I know that there's been a lot of stress in that couples dynamic because of, well, we used to be traveling every which direction in multiple different directions because of kids' extracurriculars, and now we have no extracurriculars to keep us separated, and now we're having to be at home and face each other because we have to work from home, and now we're just like, how do we actually, who are you? Like, there's just so many things happening in people's relationships. I would have to say that I'm definitely overwhelmingly blessed at the fact that my husband and I have worked together for 18 years. So we know what it's like to build a business, and we know what it's like to build a home. And so we're not strangers, but there's a lot of couples out there that really are. They don't know each other because they are so busy and distracted by family life and friend life and everything else in between. So yeah.
My husband and I, we've gone for 30 years or more for a weekend couples enhancement retreat with about 100 other couples.
Wonderful.
It happens each year. It happens in the mountains. It's called the Rocky Mountain Couples Retreat.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
And it's a wonderful resource for couples. Before COVID, they closed down during COVID. They're back. They're going to do it live in 2022 at Lake Louise. Nice. And for 2 years, we paid for and took my granddaughter and her husband. Oh. And they loved it. They went 1 year and they loved it. We took it. Just imagine being in a room with like 80 to 100 couples, all committed to discovering something about themselves. Left the children with grandma or grandpa or a babysitter to commit to a Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday till lunchtime to just focus on you and me.
Yeah, it's so good to get plugged into stuff like that. I remember early on in my marriage, we did a conference called Love and Respect. And it really just helped us understand that, hey, us women, we want to be loved and our men want to be respected. But if we're not getting the love, we're not respecting them. And if they're not getting the respect, we're not getting the love. So someone got to get off the crazy train and just pick up their socks, right? So, but it just helps us bring into perspective. It's like, if I'm not feeling loved, then he must not be feeling respected. And so I need to be able to, one of us has got to recognize that and be quick to turn it around by like showing respect. And sometimes it's really hard because you're like, how do I respect somebody that doesn't deserve to be respected? Or how does he love me and I don't deserve to be loved, right? Because I'm just I'm condescending or whatever's going on in our relationship. But to be able to shift it and just be like, okay, so someone got to get off the crazy track. So we just gotta, just do it, even if it's difficult, and you'll start to see that shift and you'll start to receive what you desire, because we're human, we all have stuff. So
it's like somebody in the sandbox needs to be a grown-up.
That's right. Yes, I love it. Oh, well, I very much appreciate you, Patricia. I will make sure to put the link to your website so people can get plugged into your free seminars that you do every month and to get access to your newsletter. And if you want couples therapy or any of your inner child work, the deeper stuff, if you need some of that trauma, inner child healing, as you can tell, Patricia's fun. She brings toys into the equation, and she'll definitely love you through it. So I appreciate you taking this time with me today and just sharing all your goodness.
Aw, thank you. And yes, that's a little rule of mine, that we don't separate online until there's a smile, or sometimes people have a nap. Like they'll be lying on their couch while we have a discussion so that they're relaxed. And I'll say, would you like just to close up with a nap? Or we do, and I'll invite you to do this, we do a virtual hug. And so if we're going to say goodbye, yeah, just imagine me giving you a warm, loving hug, Tracy.
Love
as
it.
Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love hugs. I always like in my emails or whatever, I'll be like, okay, hugs. And I do like these little brackets with hugs in big letters just so that they know I'm sending them big, warm, loving hugs.
Nice, nice.
Yes, thank you for that hug, Patricia. I appreciate you.
Thank you. You too.